he didn't like the idea of me being with one of the crew. It had to be the band. And then we had a long discussion in the hotel on the Kiss tour about the music that I listened to. So my only answer to that, is the same as anybody, is that when you're on a tour with a heavy metal band and you're playing heavy metal every night and you're listening to Kiss playing heavy metal and Maiden playing heavy metal, when you go back to your hotel room and you might want to have a little drink or a shower, and you just want to chill out and you just want to relax, it doesn't matter what music you listen to. But Rod seemed to take it upon himself that it was that kind of music. If I wanted to listen to the Eagles, or if I wanted to listen to a Little River Band or George Benson, he found it annoying the fact that it could interfere with my contribution to Maiden. And then at the end of the day, it started creeping into the personality thing and it just slowly got worse. So when we came back from the Kiss tour, Rod said, we need to have a little chat. So me and Steve went up to Rod Small's office and we sat there, and he said, it's just, you're not into the band 100%. And I said to him, well, I am. So he said, you're not into the band as much as what we'd like to see. So my question to him was, are you satisfied with the guitar playing? And he said, yes. And I said, and are you satisfied with the vocal contribution? And he said, yes, more than enough. So I said, so if the job's being done, what is my personal life got to do with it? What, you're coming to my house, you're telling me what I can listen to, what TV to watch. And he said, no, he said, if you're listening to different stuff like that, you can't be focused on Iron Maiden. So we disagreed, and that was it.
With Adrian Smith installed, the band then began work on a new studio album, Killers, with Martin Birch producing. Displaying a harder approach to its predecessor, it charted in the UK at number 12 and went gold in several major territories. In May, Maiden embarked on their Killer World Tour. The band played in 15 countries and made their US debut, opening for metal titans Judas Priest.
We've done the Judas Priest British Steel tour over here, and then when they'd done their next album, after that, the Point of Entry tour, they went to America to go on tour, and they wasn't selling the tickets they needed to sell. So they invited us to go on. Now, by then, this was the second Maiden album, Killers, for us. The first time made a lot of headway. I think we tried about number 10 in America, something like that. So it was there, but we hadn't actually played. So the hype's all built up and everything. But you're talking about, I think what done it for us is, wow, this is unbelievable, is when we done it in England. I mean, England first always. And you sit and you're like, my God, we're all little wankers from East London, what's going on? Love him playing and all that, but it's getting worse, it's getting a bit out of control. I think it was all taken aback a bit. But it opens your eyes a bit when you go to America and you get out there and we're playing Long Beach Arena and stuff. I had support to UFO and stuff like that, and then on with the Priest shows and that. It was amazing. I think it hit every one of us there, and then this band is actually worthwhile, worth doing. We do have something, and fucking hell, we love playing. And, that was it. I think that was all that mattered.
This is how true to their roots they were in the early days. They never used to like American beans. American beans back in the 80s always used to come with these terrible bits of pork in them and things that shouldn't be there. So Maiden used to ship over, for the long tours, they'd ship over Heinz baked beans, and they'd ship over Raddles beer because you couldn't get proper beer in the States back then. And they just wanted to keep it as English as they could. They used to cook up the beans in the hotel rooms using the element from the electric kettle, stick it in, 20 minutes later, serve it up. Beans a la Maiden, they used to call it. Fantastic stuff.
However, as the Killer tour came to an end that September, it was clear that singer Paul Di'Anno's days were numbered.
Paul was great for Maiden at a certain stage. There was probably a lot of kids out there that preferred Paul's voice to Bruce's or anyone else. But me personally, I've always said to Rod Smallwood and to Steve Harris that if you're going to compete against American bands and you know, your Ronnie James Dio and your David Lee Roths and Sammy Hagers of the world. The voice has got to be up there. It's got to be up there with the best, with your Robert Plants. Paul struggled with the range, although he suited the band at an early stage. I also felt that Paul struggled slightly with his stage presence in communicating with a crowd. You know, when you've got them in the palm of your hand, they can eat out your hand, but Paul, he just needed to sort of like gel a little bit with the audience.
You see, the thing is, Di'Anno suited the rougher end of Maiden when it was like playing very small places, and he had the foot totally suited to that. Now, I don't know what reason is being given for his departure now, but certainly at the time it was claimed that a lot of the problem was with various rock and roll pursuits, which were weakening his voice and weakening his performance. So anyway, it was just by pure piece of luck that the guy they brought in, who was known as Bruce at the time, Bruce Dickinson, was perfect for America. Because you wouldn't have got the airplay, you wouldn't have got the radio play in the States with Di'Anno's voice, because it was a bit too rough for American radio. Dickinson, on the other hand, had the perfect voice. And it in some ways, as much of a character as Di'Anno was, in a different way, but a much more polished performer. I mean, we used to call him the air raid siren, because of the power of them lungs. And he was very physical on stage. Di'Anno, for all the qualities he brought to the band, no one could say that Dickinson was a disappointment.
I think Paul Di'Anno quite regularly admits that he was thinking about leaving Iron Maiden, and Iron Maiden were thinking about him leaving at the same time. Because he'd basically become too much of a loose cannon. I think the main problem was that they were having to cancel too many gigs because his lifestyle meant that his voice wasn't up to standard. And Steve Harris has always been, I would say it's unfair to say a hard taskmaster, but quite a perfectionist, you know, and always says, you know, he's never even smoked a cigarette, let alone taken any drugs, and you know, drinks if he wants to drink. So certainly I think Paul Di'Anno's lifestyle in 1981 wasn't fitting well with the rest of the band.
The second album, Killers, as I said, was going more towards the metal side and less of the punk side. I was a bit unhappy, even though I wrote the title track with Steve, Killers itself. There was other songs on there where I had issues with, and even though like I didn't leave for about another year and a half later, but you're touring and stuff, so I'm very unhappy. I just didn't feel right in myself, so obviously to make it more interesting for myself, I was drinking more alcohol, doing more drugs, because you seem to blot out the memory of that something I loved was turned into something I didn't want, but it was being successful, you know what I mean? But I knew there and then that I didn't want to go down that route, so to blot out some of this stuff, you do these things, you know. I wasn't the only one doing drugs at the time, but you know, like, I was doing it, and I was very, very unhappy, and I think they knew I was unhappy, and it came to a head, and we were going to sit there. I think Steve was about to say something about, like, we want you to either straighten it up or go, and I wanted to go anyway, so we came to the conclusion, okay, I'm out of here, man, that's it, I've gone.
I think Paul Di'Anno will be remembered as the guy that kick-started it for Iron Maiden and sang on what many regard as two of their best albums. Maybe not the best albums, but certainly if you ask a big Maiden fan to name, say, even their top three, one of those albums quite often will be one of the ones that Paul sang on. People have told me stories about being at school at the time and people coming in wearing black wristbands because it was reported in the NME that Paul Di'Anno had left Iron Maiden. One of Paul's last performances with the band was at the Reading Festival in 1981 when Iron Maiden headlined one of the nights. On that actual festival site, Samson were also playing, which was Bruce's band at the time. And I think it was actually during Iron Maiden's set, their manager was actually talking to Bruce about, might be a change coming, do you want to join the band? And certainly, you know, the initial part of the deal was done at the Reading Festival site in 1981. And it did propel Iron Maiden